What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to be unboxing and reviewing the Flipsky VX3, which is the latest remote controller from Flipsky. This is actually a water sports remote, however it can be used on any eSkate application. The first thing that I noticed when receiving this was they've actually made a very nice custom box for the VX3. I'm super impressed. It's made from a durable and very premium material, unlike the previous two remotes that Flipsky has released. Inside is also something different than usual, which is a carrying case, which holds all of the components included with the VX3. So opening up this carrying case from the side zipper, you'll be able to see all of the components on the inside organized very neatly. The first thing on the top is the actual VX3, and my first impression getting this thing straight out of the box was that it's a lot bigger and heavier than I thought it was going to be. Next we have a micro USB cable, which is actually not used for charging, but to plug into the wireless charging pad, which is located underneath that foam cutout, and this is what actually charges the VX3 remote. They've opted for a wireless charging system, which is new. There's also an orange strap. This is made for water sports as seen by the bright color and extra thickness. And then finally there's a clear plastic bag containing the instruction manual, and then on the back side all of the cables and the receiver needed so you can plug it up on any ESC. Here's a quick look of everything that's included in the VX3. The thing that immediately sticks out to me about the VX3 is its size. It's a large remote controller and easily the biggest one that we've tested for eSkate. It also feels very well built and dense, meaning that it is also quite heavy for a remote controller. It's got a massive screen on the front which is going to display all of your live data, and it's big, which means you'll finally be able to see it when riding. There are two buttons on the side face of the remote controller, one of which is a power button and the other of which is a mode switching button. This electric skateboard controller features two separate independent throttles. The one which your index finger triggers is used for acceleration, and the one which your thumb controls is used for braking. After finally getting to hold the VX3 for the first time and seeing how it fit in my hand, my first two impressions were that this is a very heavy and bulky remote, and secondly that the screen on this thing is absolutely massive. Despite being a larger remote, the fit of the remote in my hand was very good and gave me intuitive control over both throttles. The remote also felt very solid and dense, like it was constructed well. Straight out of the box, I could tell that this was a high quality remote controller that's built well with tons of really cool features. Here's a closer look of the wireless charger. It's a pretty standard looking wireless charger that you'd see with a smartphone or any other device that uses a wireless charger, so nothing special or out of the ordinary here. And then the actual wrist strap that they include isn't really made for eSkate, and I don't think anyone should use this thing for eSkate. It's made more for water sports as seen by its vibrant color. You can slot it through the insert on the end of the controller here. The instruction manual is very detailed. I did have to take a look at it and read through all of the instructions, as there are quite a few features in this remote controller and it is a little different than the VX1 and 2, so I highly recommend taking a look at this thing before you actually set it up and get into using it. The receiver looks very similar to that of the VX1 and VX2. It is a UART compatible receiver, which means that it can plug into the UART port on the VESC and have access to a lot of cool features. It is also PPM compatible. It's super compact like the VX1 and VX2 receiver, and it sits inside this plastic sleeve. I really do wish that they included a plastic casing for these, but it seems like the plastic sleeving is the standard for Flipsky at this point. There's also an antenna extender if you're using this for an e-foil and you need to just have a little bit better connection. Finally, they just have all of the various cables that you'll need depending on which type of VESC you have, or if you want to run this in PPM. I skipped over charging when I went over the physical description of the VX3, and that's because there is no charge port where there normally would be one on any ordinary electric skateboard controller. Instead, the VX3 is only chargeable via the wireless charger pad, which is plugged into the micro USB cable included through the port on the side of the wireless pad. It'll glow blue once you've plugged it in, indicating that it's powered up, and at that point you can align the concentric circles on the front face of the VX3 with the center of the wireless charging pad, and it should charge the VX3. It took me a second to figure this out, but it's a system that seems to work quite well, and it just lets you know that you've aligned the charging pad with the remote controller on the spot that it wants to charge. Now that we've gone over everything included in the VX3 and all of the components, here is a quick comparison between the VX3 and the VX2 remote. As far as remotes go, the VX2 is already a pretty big remote, and it is absolutely dwarfed by the VX3. The VX3 is larger in every single dimension and makes the VX2 look like a toy. As seen here, the screen size on the VX3 is 3 to 4 times bigger than that on the VX2, meaning the data is much more visible. The other massive difference between these two remotes is the throttle control. The VX3 has the 2 triggers, whereas the VX2 has the single wheel that does the exact same function. The main point that I'm trying to make in comparing the VX3 to the VX2 is that this thing is a massive remote. In relation to the VX2, which should be a more familiar point for a lot of DIYers out there, this thing is massive. Another clear difference between the two is the weight. The VX2 weighs in at 78 grams, which is fairly light and manageable. However, the VX3 is over double the weight, coming in at 180 grams. So it's a heavy remote in addition to being big. Now we are going to do a quick setup of this receiver and the remote, starting with connecting it up to the VESC. So we are using a U-box, which is a V6 VESC. We are using the V6 cable. The smaller end plugs into the receiver as shown, and then the larger 8-pin JST cable will connect into the UART port on your VESC. Whether this is 7 or 8 pins will depend on whether you have a V4 or V6 based VESC. We are using the same settings that we use on our 2.0, using UART as the app control. To get the board up and running, just turn the remote on and then unlock the remote. This is done by holding the triggers at the same time for a couple of seconds, and then your remote will say unlocked and you're free to use the remote, and it's connected to the board at this point. So you can test out if it works how you want. If you pull that finger trigger, it should throttle, and if you push on your thumb trigger, then it should brake. So if this works properly, then you've set up the VX3 correctly. For all of the live telemetry data to be accurately displayed on your screen, you'll need to input all of the correct settings into the VX3. Hold down the mode button to enter the menu. Pairing will be the first one. If you click mode again, it'll shuffle to the next option, which is scenario. If you hold down mode again, it'll enter the different situations you can choose from there. So eSkate and eServe are the two options, and you can push on either of the triggers to shuffle up or down through that menu, and then click the power button to accept it. Then click the mode button again to move to the next one. ESC type, we are using a VESC. That's next. Then battery cells, hold down mode button. You can use those two triggers once again to shuffle up and down. We are setting this to 12S. A quick note is that the thumb trigger actually goes down in value while the finger trigger actually goes up in value. So each specific trigger does go a different direction if it's a numerical answer that you're entering. We're going to keep it in miles per hour for speed option. For wheeled type, we do have a belt driven system, so that's going to be changed to pulleyed, except that with the power button once again. Mode button switches us over to wheel diameter. This is going to be set to 150 because we have 6-inch pneumatic tires on this particular board. Once again, it is important that you hold down the index finger trigger if you're trying to go up, and the thumb trigger if you're trying to go down in value for the wheel diameter. Wheel pulley is being set to 60T because that's what we have on our wheel pulley, and motor pulley is being set to 15T because that's what we have on our motor pulley. Next up we have pull pairs, and I get a lot of questions about this one because most people aren't really sure what to put here. For most situations it's going to be 7. Most eSkate motors have 14 pulls, which is 7 times 2 or 7 pairs. Ping switch I just left on, I'm not really sure what that does. There's also a throttle sensitivity, and then you can just shuffle through the rest and go back through to make sure that all of the parameters are how you want them. And once they are how you like, just click the power button and you'll be right back onto the main screen. At this point you should be good to go, and all of the correct information and data will be displayed on your VX3 screen. Now this is what it looks like when you throttle. There's a lot to unpack here because there are a ton of really cool pieces of information and data that can be found on this screen. So in the top right corner we have the actual remote's battery, the middle top we have the board's battery, and the top left just shows the connectivity of the board to the remote. The biggest number in the middle of the screen that says 35.1 is your current speed. You can see the little MPH in white off to the right of that, and then above that, just in green, is the direction you're going. So it says FW here because we're going forward. Next, on to the bottom half, we have the ride odometer. Here it shows that we've gone 0.122 miles so far on this ride. Next, we've got the motor power, 275 watts right now. Then we've got the ESC temperature, which is 26.7 degrees Celsius, the ESC current, which is running at 5.93 amps right now, and then at the very bottom, the yellow bar indicates how much of the throttle you're using percentage-wise. So right now, we're 97% of the way on the throttle. Here is the official diagram from Flipsky that showcases what each measurement is. Going back to the remote, one thing that I did enable was current reverse brake, which means that when I push on the thumb throttle, it will actually engage the motors slowly in reverse, which I think is a super nice feature to have. So it's not only your brake, but it does allow you to go in reverse. There's also a throttle sensitivity setting. It has 0, 1, 2, or 3, which I think is also really cool, and I haven't seen this on any other remote controllers. Each time the remote is turned on and paired to the board, it has to be unlocked, which is done by holding both of the triggers at the same time. Now for a quick review of what my experience with the VX3 has been like after riding with it for the past month. Overall, I'm really impressed with the remote. It feels like a premium product. I will say that the biggest thing that I've noticed transitioning to this remote is that it is a lot larger and heavier than most other eSkate remotes, so there is an adjustment period in getting used to it. This being said, I don't think that it's too big. That is, it still does fit pretty comfortably in my hand, and it is certainly manageable. The trade-off for having this larger remote is that you have the massive, beautiful screen on the front side, which makes it super easy to read any data while riding. I can actually tell and observe a lot of the data on my board, unlike the VX2, which is a little bit harder to see. Coming from the VX2 as my daily driver and just all of the other remotes that I've used in my eSkate history, I had never used a remote with independent triggers for throttling and braking, so it did take a little bit of time to get used to this, and to this day, even after the month I've been riding with this remote, I have to think about when I'm throttling or braking and which finger to push on the remote with. For the most part, it's pretty intuitive, and if this is your first eSkate remote, I don't think you should have an issue. However, for me, I'm just so used to having that single wheel that it is a little bit confusing having two separate triggers. The battery life on the VX3 is also pretty good, but it's nothing extraordinary. In the 100 or so miles that I've put on this board, I've only charged it 2 or 3 times, so it holds up pretty well, but that's expected with remotes these days. I haven't dropped the remote yet, so I can't really speak to its durability, but just from using it over the past month, it feels like a solid, dense, and well-built remote, so I think the durability is probably pretty good on this thing. It's an IP67 waterproof grade rating, so it's also a waterproof remote, which just goes to show the build quality on it. One thing that I do find annoying is that it's only chargeable via the wireless charger, so I think it's super cool that they've integrated a wireless charger for an eSkate remote. However, there is no other port to charge this remote, which means that you can't charge while riding, which could be an issue if you're running out of battery and need a charge on the go. As far as connection goes, I haven't had any issues thus far with the remote, no dropouts, and it's worked perfectly on that front. As more riders begin to use this remote, we'll get a better idea of how reliable it is, but for now, from my experience, it's been fantastic. So here are my concluding thoughts on the Flipsky VX3. First and foremost, it's a quality remote controller. Not only does it have an excellent build quality, but it's loaded with tons of very cool top-of-the-line features. Second is that the VX3 is bigger, bulkier, and heavier than most other remotes out there, so when weighing your options, that's going to be something very important to consider. Third are the ergonomics of this remote. Whether you want a single wheel or 2 independent triggers is going to be a huge deciding factor in whether this is the right fit for you. That concludes our review of the Flipsky VX3 remote controller. If you guys have any other questions about this remote, make sure to leave them down in the comment section below, and we will also leave a link in the description to the VX3 on Flipsky's website that contains a little bit more information. If you guys enjoyed this video and made it this far, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel for lots of other DIY electric skateboard content and reviews. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next video.